Hello everyone, welcome to a brand new season of VLGA Connect, sponsored by Hunt & Hunt Lawyers. It's great to be back with you in 2026. Each week right here we'll bring you news from around the sector and special guests discussing current issues of interest. On the program today, VLGA President Dr. Josh Fergeus and CEO Kathryn Arndt will be here to set the scene for the VLGA's premier leadership event of the year, FastTrack, coming up later this month, focusing on the topic of incivility. Tony Raunic will be here with his legal perspective on some current issues. Plus, there's much more to kick off this new season of VLGA Connect. Let's start with a look at the Connect news headlines of the week. Melbourne Lord Mayor Nick Rees is calling on governments to take urgent action on the environmental impact of data centres. This week, the City of Melbourne voted unanimously to push for transparent monitoring requirements and better oversight from state and federal governments. Lord Mayor Rees says data centres are the biggest challenge to hit our energy systems since air conditioning was introduced in the 1950s. Rural Councils Victoria has called on the state government to pause consultations on major energy and mining proposals during the official fire danger period. It says it's almost impossible for rural communities to engage meaningfully while also dealing with bushfires. RCV says it's about procedural fairness, not being for or against individual energy or mining projects. Wyndham City Mayor Josh Gilligan has vowed fierce opposition to any housing development at the historic RAAF base at Point Cook. It's one of 67 defence sites across the country to be sold off by the federal government. He told The Age this week it would create Australia's least livable suburb. Any housing development would require approval from both houses of Victorian Parliament, as the site lies outside Melbourne's urban growth boundary. City of Greater Shepparton Mayor Shane Sarley is frustrated that the government's new train services don't include promised new services between Shepparton and Melbourne. He says the region has been overlooked and is calling for the 9 daily return services that were promised once infrastructure upgrades were carried out. Those works were completed last year, and Shepparton still has 5 weekday services, the same as before. The Mayor of Bass Coast, Councillor Rochelle Halstead, is leading a campaign to protect the future of the Phillip Island MotoGP, calling it vital to the region's identity and economy. The Australian Motorcycle Grand Prix has been held at Phillip Island since 1997 and is now the largest regional sporting event in Australia. Across the border, Albury City Council has parted ways with long-serving CEO Frank Zachnich. Mr Zachnich, who's been on unplanned leave since early December, led the council for more than a decade after joining in March 2013. Gail Evans-Barr will continue as acting CEO, with an interim CEO expected to be appointed by mid-month. New planning reforms have passed the Victorian Parliament this week. The government says they'll cut red tape, fast-track good developments and make the housing system fairer. The legislation gives councils and the planning minister the power to require social and affordable homes in new developments. And there are new rules in place now for how councils manage unpaid rates. The ministerial guidelines require councils to offer flexible payment plans to residents under financial pressure and provide modern payment options, including fortnightly or monthly billing. Mansfield Shire Council has launched the It's Better With You Here marketing campaign to attract tourists back to the high country following recent bushfires. The staged campaign showcases various towns and operators across the Shire to support economic recovery and remind visitors that the area remains open and welcoming. And the community of Harcourt in Mount Alexander Shire is mounting a campaign to bring music act Tones and I to the town as a mood lifter after recent fires. It follows a challenge from the singer, who's offered a full production show to the Australian town with the most online engagement. Mount Alexander Mayor Toby Hayden has lent his support to the campaign. Take a look at this.
They say, oh my God, I see the way you shine. Take your hand, my dear, and place them both in mine. You know you stopped me dead while I was passing by. And now I beg to see you dance just one more time. Ooh, I see you every time. And oh my, I like
Well, that's pretty special, I reckon. And I've got the Mayor of Mount Alexander with me now, Toby Hayden. Hello, Toby. Welcome on the show.
G'day, Chris. Thank you. Yeah, pretty special is one way of putting it. Pretty funny
Indeed.
is another.
And I do wonder how much arm twisting was involved to get you to do that.
Well, actually, not much. I got an email in the morning at about 9 o'clock saying that, oh, we're putting together a little video of us lip syncing to the Tone song. It's a dance monkey.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, yeah, sure, I'm available. And the email was like, well, just like 5 or 10 seconds each, right? And we'll go through the organization. And then I was busy, as you can imagine, doing stuff, and there's
Yeah.
lovely media and comms people came down, and I was kind of a bit sidetracked mind-wise, and there was some sort of spiel at me that I didn't quite catch, and I'm like, okay, let's just do this. What do you want me to do? So we shot this video in sort of 3 takes, but all no rehearsal, just straight up, which kind of adds to the daggy dad sort of emotion. And
Yeah,
then I realized what they were trying to say to me at the beginning of that meeting was, oh, actually, no one else is available, so it's just going to be you.
I did wonder how many takes it took to do that, but it was all one take in the end,
Yeah,
from
so
what
it's
I
three
could tell.
takes,
Yeah.
one in the office, one at the steps, and one in the office, one coming out the door, and one down the steps. Although, to be fair, the one down the steps was actually 2 takes because I got to the sign too quickly. So,
Right. Okay.
but I
And
kind of
is this part of your normal demeanor, the dancing, the lightness?
look, I do, like, yeah, okay, thanks, Chris. Yeah, so my wife's a fitness instructor, and
Yeah.
she's always going on about, mobility and fitness and whatever. And I remember listening to this kind of podcast from the UK. And the takeaway was that of all these kinds of different exercise, whether you go to a gym twice a week or jog twice a week or dance for like 20 minutes 3 times a week, the dancing was actually way better for physical health,
Right.
mental health, everything. I've got a back injury like lots of tall men do, and so I like to put on really loud music from 7 till 7:30, 2 or 3 times a week in the
Yeah.
morning and just kind of shut my blinds and have a bit of a groove in my office. And I find that really helps my back. So yeah, I
Fantastic.
guess around the traps, maybe those who start early know that I like really loud banging techno first thing in the morning and some dance moves.
There's
So
a
maybe
little
that was part of it. Yeah.
there's a little insight into the dance monkey, Mayor. Can we perhaps just be serious for a second? Because there's a serious issue behind this. The community of Harcourt impacted by bushfires recently. They're looking for a mood lifter. They're trying to get engagement. So Tones and I says, yes, I'll come and do a concert in Harcourt, as I believe she's already agreed to do up in Queensland in Ingham. Just very quickly paint the picture for us. Harcourt
Yeah.
bushfires. What's occurred there?
Right. Well, just to go back a step, so Tones put it out there that the communities that make the biggest noise
Yeah,
might get a benefit concert from her.
yeah.
And we're yet to hear. So I think she's announced 4 of those gigs. There's 5 to announce. So we've still got our fingers crossed.
Right.
Most of your listeners would be aware that we had some fairly devastating fires hit Harcourt in early January, and it was the first time in the history of our shire, pre or post amalgamation, that we actually had bushfires destroy such a significant part of a residential area. Of course, we've had bushfires in country areas before, both before and after amalgamation. But this is the first one that I can find that has actually done so much damage to a township. And I guess in a way, fortunately, the fire was a very fast-moving grass fire. So it took out, like if you look at aerial photos and drone footage of the fire ground, it's kind of like the fire spread in fingers. So when you drive through Harcourt, you'll see that there are kind of east-west kind of fingers of destruction where houses, gardens, paddocks have been destroyed. But then there are areas completely untouched. It's
Right.
quite strange. Like you'll see a couple of brick houses, and then you'll see an 1880s weatherboard house perfectly okay, but the brick houses are gone. The impact on the community has been tremendous, of course. Lots of the 800 residents, 900 residents of Harcourt did evacuate for those few days. And now, of course, our attention is turning to reconstruction and rebuilding, and we've got the kind of the headache of how do we find enough builders? How do we find the people who can actually do this? We've had great support from state and Fed, which is to be expected and is fantastic. But of course, in a tight-knit rural community like Mount Alexander, the impact is not just Harcourt, it's throughout the Shire. One of the biggest impacts that a lot of people are aware of is the destruction of the Cool Store. Now, the Cool Store is the only such facility between northern Melbourne and the Murray River. And so that was home to about 90 businesses' stock. Typically, that's fruit, but also bottlers. Increasingly, Harcourt was once at the apple centre of Victoria. It still is an apple centre, but it's more now about secondary processing, so ciders, wines, beer, and so on. And so many of our small boutique breweries and vineyards had their stock in that Cool Store completely destroyed, and a whole lot of harvesting equipment too. So yeah, the impact is really profound. And so this and the business about tones, of course, actually started with the community. This started with local kids and teenagers in Harcourt making TikToks and social media videos, lip syncing to her work. And so we kind of got on the back of that as to support those guys.
Well done. It certainly brought some attention, and best of luck to everyone with the recovery process there. I had no idea about the extent of some of those impacts, so it'll be felt for quite some time, no doubt. That's one of the things with these issues, isn't it? The recovery process can go on for quite some time, and we need to maintain our focus on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And recovery is uneven. Like some people are back on the ground cleaning up their sites, others haven't returned yet. And that's the thing, like recovery doesn't occur in a straight line. So it's a complex process forward. And you're right, it's a long haul.
Toby, really appreciate your time. Toby Dance Monkey Hayden, the Mayor of Mount Alexander Shire. Lovely to talk to you, and all the best.
Thanks, Chris.
And that's this week's Connect News. To keep up to date with what's happening across the sector, not just in Victoria, but more broadly, don't forget to listen to the local government news roundup, brought to you by the VLGA. It's available wherever you listen to podcasts. Coming up next, we set the scene for FastTrack 2026. Coming up later this month, the flagship event on the VLGA's calendar each year. It's FastTrack, with a pretty important topic this year, the topic of incivility and the impact that it's having. And to talk about the event, I'm very pleased to have the president of the VLGA, Dr. Josh Fergeus. Hello to you, Josh.
Thank you.
Welcome, good to have you here. And Kathryn Arndt, the CEO of the VLGA. Such is the importance of this issue. Hello, Kathryn.
Thank you, Chris. It's a great honour to be here with you in the new year and kicking off our program of events with this really important conversation.
So can we start, Kathryn, perhaps with why FastTrack is so important? What is it that you try to achieve with this particular day each year for your members?
Yeah, look, we're really conscious of the time that councillors expend on their roles and how busy the year gets. So really the aim of this program is to have councillors, in the room hearing from thought leaders across the issues that they really have to grapple with throughout their term as councillors. As sort of at that end of February sort of period before they then get into the busy year of council work. The program is a great opportunity for councillors to network and also senior executives in the sector. We're getting increasingly number of CEOs and directors coming to these programs as well, because the topics are just so relevant to the work of both the councillors and also the executive teams that support them.
I understand the interest in this is very high, one of the most subscribed events to date, and that's possibly due to the topic of incivility, a threat to local democracy. Josh, why do you think this particular topic is resonating so strongly?
I think it really speaks to the experience of a lot of councillors out there, and indeed senior executives and council staff who Kathryn referenced before. I've been a councillor for almost 10 years now, and I can pretty safely say it's more of an issue now than it has been in any of my preceding years as a councillor. And that's not to say there hasn't always been incivility levelled at councillors. I think that it always has been, but it's so prevalent now, and it comes from so many avenues and through so many mediums that it's really difficult for people to know how to respond, particularly for councillors who might be fairly new to the role. And this is something that they've just been experiencing over the past year and perhaps an election campaign. I think it will be a really valuable event. And also councillors in smaller communities, rural and regional communities, where it can be much more personal. You know, you often know the people on the other end of the phone. You might see them at the supermarket or down the street. So there's a range of reasons, but really it is the topic in the sector at the moment, I think.
Yeah, Kathryn, just picking up on what Josh is saying there, have you, from the interaction you're having from a VLGA perspective, noticed it being more or less of an issue in certain parts of the state or parts of the sector, or is it truly broadly impacting?
Look, I think it's truly broadly impacting, Chris, not only locally, also nationally and also globally. We're hearing this issue come up time and time again. We were very fortunate to host a global live panel last year with Local Government Information Unit, our partner LGIU, on the topic of incivility, and it was very well subscribed. And we heard from jurisdictions in Canada, the UK, and Australia, and all talking about this very issue. And the reason why we've branded this particular conference as a threat to local democracy is that incivility and does actually pose risks to democracy and also to effective local governance. If people aren't feeling safe to, ask questions or engage in decision making or conversations, and whether they're councillors around a table, whether it's officers in another room or members of the public in a council chamber, are getting shut down by, smaller minority groups who are displaying these behaviours that really do just shut down the conversation. So it is an issue that the VLGA has been advocating to support for some time now, and it's been reinforced, and the importance of the conversation and having some practical strategies that councillors and senior execs can take away with them has only been highlighted through the results of the inaugural Victorian Councillor Census that we did back in 2024-25. And again, the annual census that we've just completed is indicating that, again, a majority of councillors who've responded to that census, which is over 50% of all councillors in Victoria, are experiencing harassment, intimidation, and bullying in their roles.
So the VLGA is out there taking a lead on this. Josh, who else do you think needs to be part of this conversation? Where is the solution going to come from?
It's a difficult question because really, when we're talking about an impact on local democracy, we're talking about all of us. We're talking about us as a whole society, all our civil institutions. Certainly, we need state government to be taking this really seriously and to be talking to the VLGA and to the sector about what we need to ensure councillors feel safe and well supported in their roles, and that council officers can go about their business in a safe workplace. But it really requires a broader conversation in the community. You know, I'll take any opportunity I'm given to talk about this issue because everyone needs to know the impacts that it has. Feeling safe in the public realm and in the public square to contribute is fundamental to democracy. It means that people choose not to run for election. It means that people choose not to run again for re-election. It means that people don't say the things that they feel they really should be saying to represent their communities if people don't feel safe in that way. So we're talking about really fundamental aspects of our local democracy, so that the conversation needs to be wide-ranging. The VLGA is seeking to have those conversations with our member councils, but also with the state government about how we can work together to improve things. But it's going to take a lot of people doing a lot of work, I think, because as Kathryn said, it's a global phenomenon. It's not just here in Victoria.
Indeed it is. And of course, we've got the Global Civility Summit coming up in April that the VLGA is associated with, and I'm associated with as a host. So, as you say, a global issue, but more locally, this FastTrack event at the end of the month. Kathryn, what do you expect people might be able to take away from that day?
Well, we've broken down the day into 3 panel sessions. So the first panel is really looking at the cost of incivility, the impact on councillors, staff, and also community trust. So we've got an excellent lineup of panelists who can talk to that issue from a variety of different backgrounds. So elected representatives, as well as a WorkSafe senior executive who's going to look at it from a psychosocial safety perspective. And really delighted that we have Virginia Housinger, who's a journalist and author, who's also recently come out publicly to talk more about incivility. The second panel will look at, well, how do we work to rebuild respectful dialogue in a polarized world? So that's really about trying to give attendees some practical strategies that they can take away and apply. And similarly with the final panel, how do we make it safe to serve? So again, some practical tools to use to confront incivility. A terrific lineup of speakers. The full program will be released in coming days. We're just putting the final touches to that. But just for those listeners who may not yet have registered, we've literally only got a few spots remaining. So yeah, check out the website.
So we'll unpack the issue, we'll understand the impact it's having, and importantly, provide some practical tools, which I imagine councillors, executives, Josh, will particularly be looking for as takeaways.
Yeah, absolutely. And even for people who have had similar training or experiences before, it's always good to remind ourselves to bring back to those basics of what we can control and what we can't control in those interactions. I think sometimes when people hear incivility or conversations about what is civil public discourse, they think, we've just got, as councillors or council officers, a few people not being very nice to us or being a bit rude, but it goes way beyond that. You actually need a level of de-escalation skills, quite advanced self-care skills to perform well in the role these days, I think. Yeah. So having these opportunities and having them regular is really important.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Kathryn. As you say, just a few places left, and I do understand you actually mean that. I think it's almost oversubscribed, so people need to get in quick if they think they'd like to participate. How do they find out more?
They can go to our website. All of the details are there. Also, our various social media sites and platforms have all of the registration details on them.
Councillor Dr. Josh Fergeus, President of the VLGA, thank you for your time, and Kathryn Arndt, CEO of the VLGA. Good to have you both here on VLGA Connect. A brand new year, and we've got, I think, a fairly fresh new Tony Raunic joining us from Hunt and Hunt Lawyers. Hello, Tony. Great to see you.
Oh, thanks, Chris. I feel fresh. I'm not sure if I do when I look in the mirror, but anyway, thank you.
That's good to hear. Nice to have you back. Looking forward to catching up with you throughout this year for your take on issues that have some legal implications for the sector. This week, I want to talk to you about one that's brewing down in Tasmania. This has received a lot of coverage more broadly than just in Tassie. The City of Launceston staff are about to vote on a new enterprise agreement, which will effectively introduce a 4-day working week for the same pay. There's been lots of reaction to this. What's your take? What's Tony's take?
Yes. Well, I think it would be actually a first, as I understand it, certainly a first in the local government sector, as I understand it, in terms of an EBA. So I guess the jury's out for me in terms of will this result in net improvements in culture, in productivity within the council. But I can very much see what's driving it from the council's perspective. We see these cash-strapped councils across the sector. There's still pressures to increase wages, understandably, as the cost of living rises. You'd expect that the employees are seeking a real wage increase, and this is one of those lateral approaches. And I think the City of Launceston, the CEO there is hoping or believing that introducing this 4-day working week for 5-day pay will allow a net productivity improvement across the 4 days. So maybe 5 days worth of work might get done within the 4 days, or the 30.4-hour week, I believe it is, Chris.
Yeah, so so the facts here, 600 plus employees. The proposal is a 30.4-hour working week instead of 38 hours. No salary increase, so it effectively caps the council's wage bill. But the criticism that's coming from this, even from at least one of the councillors there, is that it sets a dangerous precedent. It could distort the local labour market, according to business groups. Business groups, in fact, have come out pretty strongly against this, saying it's a dangerous precedent. And I guess, Tony, the likelihood of this flowing onto other councils, if it's successful, not just in Tassie but more broadly, is a pretty live issue.
Oh, and in fact, I don't even know that you know, the pressure from the employees, I don't think that will necessarily wait to see the outcome of the productivity. I think the next lot of EBAs running in Victoria, we're likely to probably see the ASU raise this issue, and this is potentially as an alternative to a cash increase in wages.
And
So
that's
I
a good
think,
point you make, because it is the ASU, and I think from my knowledge, the ASU operates a Vic-Tas branch, so same people probably involved in negotiations at other councils across the two states.
yeah, absolutely. And I guess particularly in that regional economy that is that large, regional city that Launceston is, northern Tasmania, yeah, I can absolutely appreciate why that there would be flow-on effects within the local economy. Certainly, perhaps demand from employees in related industries across the local economy for similar arrangements. If your spouse is on a 4-day work week, Chris, you might be keen to have some similar arrangements so you can, get the benefit of that with some, leisure and rest together. So I can see that happening, and I can definitely see, particularly those more financially constrained councils in Victoria that are also significantly unionised in terms of their employee workforce, looking at this as an alternative to the significant sort of revenue impact that an increase in wages relative to inflation might cause.
Yeah, good point. Sam Johnson's the CEO there. He's defended this deal that's been negotiated against this fierce criticism. He's called it a nationally significant step in modern workplace reform. And in just today, this morning, as we record this in the Examiner, he's quoted as telling those other critics, those business groups in particular, to stick to their knitting. He knows service delivery, he knows local government, they don't. So it'll be interesting to see where this does land. The local government minister in the state, Kerry Vincent, who's a former councillor and mayor himself, has said it's a matter for the council. And I wondered, Tony, is there any legal impediment to these sorts of agreements when they're, bringing in significant change like this, if some of those critics were of a mind to try and challenge it somehow?
Yeah, well, of course, the employer and the employee don't have the final say on this. So as you say, this will go to the workforce, the workforce that is part of the EBA. They will vote on the in-principle agreement later this month, I believe.
Yes.
And so if they adopt it or support it, it still has to go to the Fair Work Commission in Tasmania for them to ratify and approve it. And then it would come into effect, I think, from June. So I guess you might see, some bigger employer body potentially making representations to that Fair Work Commission saying this is an inappropriate measure.
Right.
And we've seen that, at a national level with Fair Work Commission cases nationally. So that's a possibility, Chris. I'm thinking, how do you measure productivity? So I guess for some employees, that's easy to do. I guess Parks and Gardens team, you might measure how many parks have been maintained and mowed and such across the 4 days versus the 5 days. But for other people in different teams, it might be harder to measure productivity. And I know within my own organisation, Chris, the lawyers fill out timesheets and, in 6-minute units, and we can see exactly what they're doing. But, the admin staff, the receptionists, staff in communications, they don't fill out those, if you like, productivity tracing sheets.
Yep. And certainly not in 6-minute units, Tony.
No, absolutely not. So maybe, how do we measure this improvement in productivity that we're promised? And I'm sure there will be innovative ways to do that. But and I'm certainly aware that it was a very, very major thing in the 19th century when Victoria, I think one of the first jurisdictions in the world, went to a 5-day working week. Everyone worked on a Saturday, and we know that the 8-hour day, 5-day working week is a really major change that occurred, and I think Victoria led the charge in that internationally. And we've managed, and we've coped.
And I imagine there was opposition to that too at the time.
Don't doubt that from business groups, employers at the time. So I think the jury's out on this for me, in terms of the impact it will have both in the local regional economy, but more broadly, the impact it will have in terms of, will the City of Launceston need to employ more people to do the same work, or will they end up, doing less work net across the board, or will we just see an increase in productivity over time?
One to watch very closely, and as you say, the vote's happening this month in the coming days. I don't know exactly when, but we'll certainly keep an eye on that and report further as that situation develops. Interesting. Thank you, Tony. Now, before I let you go, over the break, the Darebin Monitors report was released. Normally, we'd unpack that here, but we've actually already done that. So for those who haven't heard, Tony joined me on the Local Government News Roundup a couple of weeks ago for a longer form conversation about that report and municipal monitors in general. So we recommend you go back and have a listen to that if you'd like to be brought up to date on it. Had a lot of good feedback about that discussion, Tony, and where we might have future discussions in terms of the use of monitors and why they're needed, what's broken down to cause that to happen. So perhaps that's a conversation for the not too distant future.
It's a highly relevant topic in the sector right now, Chris. You're spot on.
Tony Raunic from Hunt & Hunt Lawyers, lovely to get your take, and we'll talk to you again very soon. Thanks for coming on VLGA Connect.
Thank you.
That brings us to the end of a pretty bumper edition for the start of the season on VLGA Connect. Thanks to all of our guests today, Toby Hayden, the Mayor of Mount Alexander, Kathryn Arndt and Josh Fergeus of the VLGA, and Tony Raunic from Hunt & Hunt Lawyers. As we mentioned earlier, FastTrack seats are filling fast. There's literally 1 or 2 places left. If you'd like to be part of that on the 27th of February, head to the VLGA website to find out more and to book your place. It's going to be a very significant day. That's the 27th of Feb at the RACV Club in Melbourne. That's VLGA Connect for this week. Thanks so much for watching or listening. Don't forget to subscribe in your podcast player or on YouTube to be notified of future episodes. We'll be back with much more next week. Until then, bye for now.